welcome to Craft and Geek podcast, the podcast about making, cosplay, and all around geek life. I am one of your hosts, Eric, also known as Coregeek, and with me is...
Hi, I'm Jackie Craft. How are you?
Hey, Jackie. So this is
where
are we going with this one?
No, so I was talking to Eric before we started this, and I thought a fun way to come up with topics to talk about, because we just conversationally begin just chatting about what we're working on, is to talk about what we're working on and how, as an artist, I don't have 20 years of experience in this cosplay craft maker kind of universe, and I trial and error a lot of things. I buy a lot of different materials that are recommended to me and test them out and try so hard to reach that holy grail of the perfect finish or the perfect mold, and the most, while trying to be time and budget efficient. So I was telling Eric before we got started that I'm working on Overwatch's Thunderbird Pharah skin, like I've told lots of you guys, and you've seen some of my progress. And I have hacked a lot of it up and completely rehashed pieces because I decided I have a lot more time. I want to make this as close to a replica, which is not my area of expertise, as possible. So Eric, luckily, my friend Eric that I've joined on this journey with is really great at replicas. And so I was asking him what type of things I should be using to get that nice, to fill these little tiny imperfections that I keep coming up with. Like a great example is I was working on this crotch piece for Pharah, and I have these spots where I didn't put the Epsilon on quite thick enough. Epsilon Pro, as some of you guys have used, it takes a pretty thick coat to really be a good laminating resin. Otherwise, you can get brush strokes and it won't self-level as well. Well, I have those little divots. And I've tried lots of like spackle and fillers and everything, Elastopatch, vinyl spackle, lightweight filler for your wall, autobody filler, pro glaze and spot putty. And lo and behold, he tells me he doesn't use the pro one. He uses the regular, which is like $4 a tube. And I literally went and tried it immediately and I already like the results more. So it's I thought it'd be a fun thing to talk to you guys about how Eric goes about getting some of his beautiful like car body finishes, and maybe I'll learn from it as well. So yeah. Well, so basically, tell us how you do it.
So you just kind of slap some stuff on there, and
I knew it. I knew that's what you did.
Pray for the best and hope it works.
Is there a dance involved? Like some kind of
no dancing. No, just
candles lit or anything.
Get on your knees, cross your hands. And
a little prayer.
Pray to God Almighty.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. So
yeah, so this is obviously a big topic, right?
It's huge.
And I want to say that I am not an expert, okay? I've been doing this kind of work, prop work, for about 4 or 5 years. So I've learned some things along the way. I would say it's fair to say I am known for clean, smooth finishes. But just because it's the way I do something doesn't mean it's the best way to do it or even the right way to do it, and there are probably people out there that have even better ways that are much quicker. But
they're going to fight you.
But the processes I use work for me. So I just want to throw that out there. One thing that we want to promote with the podcast is learning of all types. And just because I'm talking about a certain process doesn't mean that's the way it has to be done. So I just want to throw that little disclaimer out there. I actually have more experience with wood finishes than I do with, painting and stuff. Because really, until I started doing prop work, when I was doing woodworking, everything was a wood finish. Everything was stained and either lacquered or clear-coated polyurethane or things like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually probably more versed in that kind of stuff. But for prop making, let's talk about it a bit.
I'd like to hear about some of your go-to materials.
Like
why you use that spot putty.
Okay, so I use that spot putty, and the spot putty that Jackie's talking about. Where's the tube I had? Oh, right here. That's just Bondo glazing spot putty. It's the red stuff. Now, I know that a lot of people, especially recently, there's been a lot of talk in the community and on some of the boards that I'm part of, or some of the groups I'm part of, about acrylic putty, and I haven't used acrylic putty yet, and I'm sure acrylic putty is great, and I just haven't bought any yet to use it because I have spot putty. So we realize acrylic putty exists. And if you love acrylic putty, that's great. I haven't used it yet.
It's not this one, just so you guys see.
No, it's not the Pro Bondo spot putty. It's just the standard glazing and spot putty is the one we're talking about.
Yes.
So if you love acrylic putty, that's great. I'll probably try it and love it and never go back to spot putty. But for now, I haven't used it yet, so I really can't talk about acrylic putty. So enough about that.
But if you do want to learn more about it, if you're part of the Prop Tarts community, Volpin, Harrison put up a good post.
Yeah, and Harrison Cricks from Volpin Props did a really great post about why acrylic putty is a better product, and why it adheres better. Because one of the complaints about the spot putty is that some people were having problems with it not sticking to 3D prints. You know, because they're using it to skim coat 3D prints to get rid of the print lines, and it wasn't sticking. And it has to do with the type of material that it is. I can't give a full explanation of it, but suffice to say, if you're looking for something to fill 3D prints with, apparently the acrylic putty is a much better product. So Jackie and I got on the topic of the spot putty because I told her she was having issues with her helmet that she's working on and a couple voids, little spots that need to be fixed. And I said, well, just fill it in with spot putty and sand it down and then give another coat of your primer on top of that. Primer and finishing with finishing. Your camera just went out of focus. Can you?
Oh, hello.
Wave your hand. There we go. All right. So with spot putty, it comes in handy because when you're doing your multiple coats of priming, and for me, the real buildup of finishing a piece and getting a really smooth finish comes down to the time you spend on the sanding and the priming part of it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about sanding?
I mean, I hate sanding so much. Like, I hate it right now. It's a love-hate relationship because, like, I really enjoy the final bit of sanding, like the, the 400 or the wet sanding. Like, I just love that moment of it's so slick and smooth. But I can't stand the beginning, like the 80, the 120, the 220, like whatever.
Yeah, the build-up, right?
The chunking it down to get it smooth kind of process. But it's I don't know, mainly because it just gets dust everywhere. Like, I have a dust collection. I shop vax right here with its big little, like, dust tornado collection thing. And I'm always vacuuming up around myself just because it overtakes everything. But it's such a long process. And obviously, I would save myself a lot of time if my beginning piece was that much smoother and that much better to start with. Like, I asked you, finishing Warbler can be, because Warbler is grainy and textured already, it can be a lot.
Especially original Warbler.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of my pieces, like, oh man, this is the trickiest part, is that a lot of my pieces, I'll use a little bit of Warbler for a certain part of it and then foam for the rest to compensate for, like, I don't know, if I need something really organic that I don't feel like making out of foam. Yeah. But in the finishing post part, that presents a new problem because it's two completely different textures. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's
and bringing that Warbler up to the smoothest of foam where you're already starting out.
Yeah.
It's like if it's a scale of 1 to 5 and the smooth surface of foam is 1, you're starting Warbler at like a -5. So you have to you have to go from -5 to 0 to get to 1 to where you're even at the same smoothness before you can really start finishing it and have them look like one material, right? Because generally speaking, you're trying to make two materials look like the same material.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do with Warbler because it has that grain already built into it. Although I will say Black Warbler, definitely a much better product as far as that part goes.
Yeah, definitely.
There are pluses and minuses, pros and cons to Black Warbler.
And Fibra is even better further along, but like that has its downsides just as much.
Yeah, and I haven't worked with Fibra yet. I've heard very mixed things about it.
It sticks to everything. Your fingers,
that's what I hear.
Yeah, I mean, it looks really good. It stands about the same way as Warbler. I mean, pretty much the same as Warbler. But it, it sticks to everything. It's such a bummer in that regard. But it will pick up every single bit of detail, and it's great for heat, like organic sculpting. So, like, if you heat it and you're making like filigree or something, it's great for that. It sticks really well, and it doesn't require a lot of like post sanding or anything. It's pretty smooth on its own. It's just hard to like. I would never use it to cover a giant piece, like a leg armor. I wouldn't use it to cover a leg armor.
Yeah,
I would.
That's pretty much what I've heard about it. Is that it's great for organic sculpting, a thermoplastic it's maybe like a little easier to use than something like the plastic pellets that you melt, you know.
Yeah, the Instamorph kind of
Instamorph, yeah, that it
yeah.
almost is like Instamorph, but it's like a sheet of Instamorph
Yeah.
instead of like, you know, the collection of Instamorph. So,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
Instamorph is definitely even, you know, next level sticky. It'll yank the nail polish off of your fingers, which has
oh
happened to
wow,
me so much.
that's crazy.
Yeah. So if I'm going to paint my nails, I always take it off before I use Instamorph because it sucks. It
Wow, I
sticks.
never would have thought of that. I just always make sure. I just always make sure my fingernails are like really short, you know, because I've actually damaged pieces that I'm working on. I don't wear my wedding ring when I'm in my shop for safety reasons, and I've damaged things I'm working on with my wedding ring and with my fingernails. So I always make sure those are really,
I'm so
really
messy,
trimmed.
I would ruin it.
But coming back to finishing, the majority of the finishing really comes in to the prep before you're done. And we're talking, I mean, we're really talking smooth finishes here. It's, you know, textured finish is kind of a whole nother ballgame because if you're working with a textured finish, it doesn't necessarily have to be smooth, you know, or it's not smooth because it takes away the texture. So the thing that we're talking about right now is definitely, you know, very smooth, clean, some call it a perfect finish. I hesitate to call.
If you're going to spray chrome, you wouldn't spray chrome on regular unfinished Worbla and
no. And I have a YouTube video that compares different things that I tested like 3 years ago when when the first time I used Worbla. I tested all these different things, and I have you know a test that I did of. Because I was doing the Loki costume, and it's gold, right? I mean, it's gold. It's got to look like gold, and you know, there's a test there of just the gold sprayed with Worbla, you know, or the Worbla sprayed with gold, and it looks like a golden orange, you know, because you know, because it just doesn't look like gold. It looks like an orange peel. So you can't get away with that, especially anything metallic. If you're trying to replicate something that's metallic and you want that really great finish, it's gonna come in the prep. And for me, the prep is it's laborious. It's a lot of work. Depending on what material I'm starting with. Now, generally speaking, if I'm doing a replica, mostly I'm going to be doing some type of casting, which means I'm building, you know, a master out of harder materials. Not generally speaking,
something you can sand.
Yeah, generally speaking, I'm not going to do, you know, a high-end build out of foam. Because that's just not the material I'm going to go to for very specific lines and details. There are people that do amazing things with foam, but when you're trying to build a piece that you're going to, you know, do resin casting with because you need multiple parts or things like that, foam is just generally where you're not going to go. You want to go to harder materials like MDF. I know a lot of builders that build with MDF because it's like wood, but it doesn't have grain, and it sands pretty easily. You can shape it really well. You know, a lot of people use styrene, Sintra, any of those harder type materials.
Yeah.
And so the other nice thing about those is they're all pretty smooth to begin with. Yeah. Right. I mean, MDF, whatever edge on MDF that you cut, it's going to be kind of grainy, or not grainy, but rough. It kind of has a, I'm not sure. Have you ever worked with MDF?
Like flaky. It's kind of like flaky.
Yeah, it's not even flaky. It's almost like bumpy kind of, you know, and it's really absorbent too. So you usually have to seal it with something, and CA super glue really is one of the best sealers I've found for that, because it hardens the fibers because it's a fiber board. And then you can sand those fibers down after that.
That's smart. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that's I think I learned that one from Bill. One of his videos, maybe.
For those type of things, like the original product you're talking about, starting with something that's pretty smooth to begin with, those are for things like maybe a sword or something, like not necessarily an organic helmet.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, you're talking like maybe a space gun or a sword or something that has, you know, more of a mechanical look to it or something.
What did that dagger that you have with you start out of?
So she's talking about, I just finished up, because, you know, speaking of smooth finishes and stuff, this is one of a pair of Tariel daggers I just finished. That this is a resin cast. And the master is actually MDF. So actually, I can let me grab the master really quick.
Okay. I didn't know that MDF was so thin.
Well,
I guess I dabble in it.
I mean, I say it's sanded down. So this started as
Yeah.
half inch MDF, but
Wow.
I got a very thin edge on there. It's almost too thin. I should have made the edge line a little thicker for casting. The things you learn as you mold and cast. But this is all MDF. All of the raised parts on it is epoxy sculpt. So
Wow.
all that's epoxy sculpt and then sanded. So, and that's it. That's all the material that was used on this. It's just MDF and epoxy sculpt. Now, if I was making this for a con, I wouldn't make this out of MDF because MDF this thin is brittle. It's, this, I could take this and I could snap this in half pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of people make swords out of MDF, like with a 3-foot blade, and it's going to sag because MDF doesn't have a grain structure.
Yeah.
So there's no natural strength to it, and you end up with a floppy sword if you make a big blade. But I knew I was going to mold and cast these, and so this master can be fragile because it only has to exist for one thing, and that is to mold. So as long as it's sturdy enough, to mold,
that's good enough.
It doesn't have to be super strong. And I just realized as we were talking, I'm showing this dagger off, and for the people that listen to audio only, they're not going to see any of that. But anyway, I was just showing a Tariel dagger, that a pair of daggers that I sell on Etsy frequently. And have had quite a bit of experience with finishing those. Yeah. So. Go ahead.
So for the part that you mentioned about how is it called the mother or the positive? Like, in the mold making terminology, do they call that the positive?
I think you can call it both. I usually just call it,
the original.
Well, it's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's a master.
Master. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you could probably call it a positive as well.
Yeah.
But
I guess it just depends on which YouTube series I watch.
Yeah. But I think the mother is probably referred to the actual mold itself, like the mother mold.
Okay. Oh, okay. And then the outer shell mold goes on top of the mother mold.
Yeah.
I've watched so many YouTube videos, and those of you listening can probably attest to this. Like I was up last night watching tons of mold making videos, and it's crazy how many different names people have for things.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where some of the terminologies have gotten switched around, so people might refer, and I might even be referring to the wrong ones at this time. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that's a total mold master that may be listening to this that's going, "Oh, those guys are idiots."
Yeah, Stan Winston, School of the Arts, and it's like, this is exactly what this is called, guys.
Yeah. So it's like our terminology. I apologize if we're using the wrong terminology, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. This is I started with a piece that's made out of MDF and epoxy sculpt.
Yeah. So for the originals, or whatever you want to call them, I was just telling Eric, I don't need these pieces to be able to be like con worthy. Like I'm casting a crotch piece and a few other like wearable parts, and I had to like move away from the fact that I can just use anything I need on this to make this original. I could have sculpted the whole thing out of like air dry clay if there was one that didn't crack very well. Like I could do anything I wanted to. Paper clay if you had to, and then fill the cracks if you were on a budget. So if you are casting it, you can definitely use anything that you want that can help you achieve that like final smooth finish. But I have found a lot of things that I love and a lot of things I hate. And I'm kind of, as I'm new to, this is my first helmet that I'm casting. And as I'm getting used to what likes each other and what doesn't, and what works on a time crunch, I'm discovering that things that I normally love, like I love freeform air, the 2-part epoxy dough, but epoxy sculpt gives me a better, cleaner finish if I'm going to be making a mold, and freeform air is definitely for the wearables. So I won't use that I used it on this helmet, and I won't use it again for this kind of like original sanding sculpt, because it can crumble. Yeah. If it's a very thin edge or area, it will crumble. The epoxy sculpt doesn't do that for me.
Yeah,
it's more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you.
I was saying it definitely holds thinner edges better.
Yeah.
I haven't worked with freeform air. How does it sand? Does it sand pretty well, or?
It sands like easier than epoxy sculpt, but it definitely
doesn't hold edges as well.
Yeah, it doesn't hold edges as well. It's so lightweight, though. They say it's 30% lighter. It feels like nothing to me. I mean, it's my whole entire beak on the front of my Farah chest piece is all epoxy or freeform air, and it was. I did all this typical wet sand, everything up to the 400 to get it smooth, and it got really smooth. And I've dropped it a couple times, and it hasn't cracked, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, that's good.
I dropped right on the beak, which blew my mind. So. Wow. I definitely, I like it. I'm not saying that you should drop your pieces and it's invincible, because it can crack and it can crumble just like epoxy sculpt. But I now know that is for my wearables. That is something that it will definitely, I won't be using it for these kind of like filler build up situations. The epoxy sculpt is heavier, and I used the rest of the epoxy sculpt. So all I had was the dough. Yeah. And, but I don't like it. Like if I have to fill in an area with like raise it up where I've done something that's completely just not symmetric. Because a lot of times I sculpted this in clay, and I talked to you and a lot of people listening about how to get my clay smooth. And we talked about this on another podcast. You froze and sanded something with with acetone or alcohol. So I decided, whatever, it's good enough. I will do all my sanding in the first cast, because I work better with that hard sanding medium. So
yeah, and that's and we talked about junk molding before. And that's definitely a valid way, because, most of us aren't super seasoned clay sculptors, right? And there's really impressive clay sculptors out there that can get any finish they want, and because they've done it long enough and they know all the great techniques, and they have that experience. Whereas us, where, we are pretty good at clay sculpting, but maybe can't quite get that exact finish we want. You make that junk mold, you resin cast it, then you have a hard piece to work with, right? That's a piece that you can sand and fill and do all that extra stuff to get that piece up to the quality you want it to be. And that's, talking about getting smooth finishes and getting like that really nice look. That's for me, that's where it's at. That's why I work well with foam coated in Epsilon, because I like a hard finish to work with, because of my background, my woodworking background, I'm used to hard things. And so, because wood's hard. So, and for me, it's like I haven't done a ton of flexible type pieces for two reasons. One, usually it's a time crunch, and I have a method that works, so I'll stick to it, if it's the for a con or something. And so it's like my go-to. And two, I just haven't taken the time to really work with flexible stuff that often, because I'm more comfortable with the non-flexible side of things.
And it really, it's two completely different. I mean, if the finishes that we're talking about are basically rigid finish, like on rigid pieces.
Finishes. Yeah.
And so like everybody has their different standards of what they consider like a really great finish. But to me, I equate it to the car so often. So like if something has the shine, the gloss of a car finish. Now, if you're going for a satin or matte finish, or like a matte black kind of really nice smooth finish, that also will show all your imperfections. So like if you want that velvety finish, that's kind of the same kind of situation. You're going for that sanded all the way up to smooth perfection before you actually coat it with those things. And those that do not listen to the sanding gods and try to cut corners and spray early are going to get something that doesn't look like a car finish. That's the fact of it. So it's you have to invest the time, and it is tedious. And if you think that there's a shortcut, share, please. But to my knowledge, it's just good old fashioned elbow grease. Like it really is. You have to sand. You have to be willing to commit to the fact that this is going to be a tedious kind of project. Yeah, exactly. And if you don't believe that, talk to anybody. And some of the best prop builders I know that have built Daft Punk helmets. Okay, I mean a Daft Punk helmet is kind of like the epitome of the perfectness you need for a finish, right? And every one of those guys I know that have built them. Harrison from Volpin Props, Tom from Sorenzo Props, Igor Pinsky. The three of the guys I know, and there are other people that built them too, but those are three off the top of my head. And they'll all tell you, I've spent hours and hours and hours sanding, filling, priming, sanding, filling, priming. Yeah. And you're talking about sanding all the way up to like, I want to say they went to like over 2,000 grit, maybe up to 4,000 grit, Yeah. So, and that's
that's a lot of sanding, because every time you change grits, that's another pass of sanding, right? And
Yeah.
and generally speaking, you're starting at either, depending on the material. I mean, when I do stuff with Epsilon, I start at 80 grit, right?
Yeah.
I go 80, 120, 220, 320, 400, and usually stop around 400 because it's a foam piece, and that's about all I want to do.
Yeah.
You know,
I always wet sand at 400. Like because I'm saying that's necessary, but I love the like satisfaction of wet sanding, and I know it's smooth, you know?
Exactly. And it's just easier to wet sand too. And it's a little less messy. Well, it's less messy dust wise, but it causes more of a mess, like wet wise, you know,
but I prefer
Yeah. And I will say that generally speaking, I start wet sanding at like 320. You know, sometimes I'll dry sand 320 because I just don't feel like setting up my tub of water and stuff, and and then I'll switch to 400. But
so you submerge? Do you submerge the piece?
No. I
just dipping. Okay.
I just take a small dish tub, fill that with water with a drop of Dawn dish detergent, because it helps disperse the sand, the dust, I guess, better. It breaks it.
Really?
Yeah, just a tad. I learned that one from WM Armory.
That's a great tip.
And then, it's just a lot of dipping water, basically. You dip the water, you rub a couple times, you dip the water, you rub a couple times. Every once in a while, I'll take like a cup, fill that with water, and then rinse the whole piece. So, you have all the grit. I mean, I would call it grit. I don't really know what else to call it.
Yeah. I use a spray bottle.
Or a spray bottle. Yeah, that would work too.
I just like that. I spray my sandpaper too to clean that off. But dipping would probably,
because the whole point of wet sanding is you're creating such fine dust that you want it to not build up as gunk on the sandpaper, and the water it lubricates the piece that you're sanding, and it keeps the sandpaper clean. And that's the whole point of wet sanding. That's it.
My gosh.
I know a lot of people are afraid to wet. They're like, oh, what's wet sanding? It's like, that's such a weird, bizarre thing. And literally it's just that. It's just you're dipping your paper in water to keep the crap off your water, because it's such fine dust. You can't just, it doesn't just like naturally fall away. Like if you're
it sits on the surface.
It just sits on the surface because it's such fine dust. And all wet sanding does is it lubricates the sandpaper, and it cleans that paper, and it lubricates the surface, and it cleans that paper.
Speaking of sandpaper cleaning, though, just a side note, something that I've discovered along my journey, because I hope that you don't think I'm an idiot for this, but I did not realize. I know that the fumes that paint off puts are part of the curing process, and so when the fumes are gone, it's cured. Yeah. In most cases, well, it never occurred to me with auto body primer that I could keep smelling it, and it obviously wasn't cured, so it would gunk up my sandpaper when it wasn't cured. And so people would tell me like, "Oh, it's gunking it up because it's not cured." And now, exactly, I sanded yesterday. All my sandpaper is perfectly clean because I'm listening to the community, and to you use your brain sometimes, because I can't believe that I had just been sanding through all this semi-cured primer, and it just drove me nuts. I would just throw away so much sandpaper. It was such a dumb move, but
well, and the sanding goes a lot quicker too, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because you're not like changing a piece. You're not changing your little patch of paper like every 3 strokes of sanding.
Yeah, and I use I have like a little Ryobi detail sander, a small one that I love, and whether or not you are a tool sander or a hand sander or both, that's completely fine. No judgment. Well, shall I pass here?
We don't discriminate, but hand sanding's better. Yeah. No, I'm just.
Hey, I like so I've tried a lot of like. This is a tangent, but might as well discuss this too. I have tried a lot of orbital sanders, palm sanders, mouse sanders. Yeah. None of them work for me. The one I like is like this tiny detail sander that has a triangle at the end. Yeah. It doesn't oscillate my hand to death. So if I'm sanding for a long time, if it's something that I'm holding like in a weird, non-ergonomically correct kind of position, my hand will hurt. I'm not as efficient, and I just don't enjoy it. You have, obviously you may not enjoy sanding, but you have to not hate it if you're because you're dedicating a lot of hours in a week to finish a piece. So I got these detail sanders, and the replacement little triangles were crazy expensive. And
so is that the little one that sort of looks like, for those of you that are
watching?
Oh, okay,
it's
that's
a little one.
Yeah.
So he's a little guy. Yep. So I spray sandpaper with 3M quick dry adhesive, and but first I trace all the triangles That way I can just peel this off and put it back on, and I don't have to buy the fabric Velcro backed ones. Like,
Yeah,
get out
I was gonna say, just grab a roll of carpet tape and a regular sheet of sandpaper, and you're good to go. Because it'll hold it on there. Carpet tape's amazing, by the way.
Yeah. Liz used carpet tape for her Jinx costume, I think, like on her body one time.
It's just very handy to have around the shop. For multiple different things. A lot of times I use carpet tape. If I'm test fitting stuff, I'll use carpet tape to kind of hold things together.
Oh, okay. And it doesn't like rip the foam off or anything?
Well, on foam, it will rip foam because it sticks too well. So you have to be careful with foam. But I'm talking more like hard pieces. So like MDF, styrene, any of that hard material stuff. It does take a little bit to get it off, but the reason I like it is because it will hold the thing together while you're trying to test fit things. But you can still remove it. It takes a little more effort, but it will still remove it. And it's super thin, so it doesn't create gapping issues and stuff. So
that's a good point.
Shout out for carpet tape. Okay, back to went on a little bunny trail there.
Be very careful using it as like double-sided tape for like ladies out there or gents. If you're using it to hold fabric to your body, just be careful that.
Oh yeah, that
stuff your skin up a little bit.
It really sticks. It really sticks good.
Yeah.
So back to the sanding thing. Yeah. So the wet sanding is a very important step, and working through those grit steps and not really skipping them is important.
Yeah.
I prime between each step. So that's another thing that I do.
Between every grade of sandpaper, so 80 to 120 and 120 to 220?
Well, yeah. So when I'm starting on a fresh piece, again, it kind of depends on what you're starting with, because you're going to start at a lower grit or a higher grit. But let's say it's MDF, right? MDF's pretty smooth already. Right. I'm probably going to start at like 180 or 220. So I'll hit that with just a standard Krylon primer, because it's cheap and it dries quick, and that's why I like standard Krylon, because of how quick it dries. This is assuming that it's not a piece where it needs heavy filler or I'd use a filler primer. Okay.
Yeah.
But just a standard piece that doesn't need a lot of filling because of its warbler or something like that. I use just regular gray Krylon. Okay. There's only one bad thing about the gray Krylon is it's not wet sandable. So if you're going to use it, only the white and black.
Does it gum up your sandpaper?
I'm not sure. It's just I've never really tested it, but I like the gray, and believe it or not, I've tried the white and the black. And to me, it doesn't sand the same.
Well, and gray is the neutral color for your eyes, so that's why people use gray to see imperfections.
Exactly, and so. And it might just be a placebo thing because I've used it for so many years. Yeah. But to me, it doesn't. It feels different when I sand it.
It's possible.
Anyway, so I start with that. I'll do a 220 pass and then maybe 320. Then once I'm to that point where I'm going to wet sand, I switch to a different brand of primer, which is Duplicolor Sandable Primer. Okay, you can find it at any auto body place that carries the Duplicolor brand. I think all the major national chains carry Duplicolor, and it's
before you talk about before you continue your step, just a little injection here. That stuff comes in sandable primer, filler, and sanding primer, and then primer. Like, why? To me, I get the same result with all of them. I've now gone to the 5 gallon so I can spray it, because the rattle can, like, why are they labeled 3 different things? It's crazy.
Well, the sandable compared to the filler is less thick. So I have noticed a difference in the thickness. The reason I like the Duplicolor for what I call it finish priming. Okay. So that's like my base is Krylon for a couple passes up to 320. And then my next step is the Duplicolor. It's just Duplicolor Sandable Primer. And you can get it in like 3 different colors. It comes in black, gray, or white, right?
But
they always have, actually specifically it's called hot rod gray. So that's important because, who doesn't want to use hot rod gray?
That no one will ever see. That's ridiculous.
It must be super fast.
Well, you're going to be wearing a lot of it while you're sanding, so they just want you to look real, classy.
And also warm the can. Put it in a cup.
Great tip. And Harrison or Bill, I don't know, or one of you folks.
I first learned about it from Harrison in his amazing finishing book, right? And you just take a larger cup, like a quart cup, like a yogurt comes in, throw that in there, just run hot tap water for like 10 minutes, and it'll heat the can. Don't heat it any more than that. You can do that
with paint too.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, and paint too.
Yeah. And pasta dip.
But don't do it with filler primer because it thins out the primer. I've learned that too.
Oh, okay.
I had less yield of a build when I would heat the filler primer can. So,
I'm glad that you told me that.
Yeah. Okay, so I moved to the Duplicolor, which is just a standard primer. And the thing I like about it, especially once you've warmed the can, it has for a spray can, it has the most amazing nozzle on it.
So you're saying don't fill the don't warm the Krylon.
Well, no, you can warm the Krylon too.
Okay, so you're saying
I usually don't.
So you're saying not to warm the sandable primer?
Am I confusing you?
Yeah, you did. Okay, so which step did you warm on?
Okay, you can warm all your cans, just don't warm filler primer.
Filler primer.
Filler primer. Specifically filler primer because it nebulizes more. I think that's what it's called. And it makes
we're going to use that word even if it isn't because that's awesome.
It makes the stream thinner.
Yeah.
And it doesn't build because the whole point of filler primer is you're building up a thickness, right? And since it makes that stream thinner, it doesn't build up as quick. That's
right. That makes
at least something I've noticed. So
you're at Duplicolor.
The standard Duplicolor is it just has the nozzle. It's like a finish. It's so beautiful. The spray nozzle that's on it. It looks. It's a wider fan, but it's as like thin of a spray as like coming out of one of my airbrushes. So yeah, it has an amazing nozzle on it. So you get this really nice, smooth spray out of it. So then once that's dry, you start your wet sanding process, and then it comes down to fill, sand, prime, right? You prime it, you sand it, you look for imperfections, you use your little bit of Bondo filler on there or acrylic putty or whatever. I mean, before I learned about acrylic putty, I used to use just Elmer's wood filler.
Yeah, I've been using vinyl spackle, which I will still attest to. If you are in a pinch and you need a big bunch of stuff on a super cheap budget, I mean, the Bondo spot putty is pretty cheap, but the vinyl spackle, I still use that. It's going to be on a lot of these pieces because it sands so well, and it's not bad, man.
Yeah, you can you can use your household spackle kind of stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just the more I use specialty products, the more it's just like I like the Bondo because it dries really quick because you're just doing really thin fills. And it sands super fast. So I just like that about it compared to the Elmer's wood filler, which I used before, which I used for years. I used it with woodworking. So.
And I will say that so far trying the spot putty, just watching it dry on our little break, it doesn't, because it dries so fast, it doesn't sag, and obviously I can get right to sanding. The vinyl spackle, I like it, but if you are using a lot of it, it can sag, and so you may need to do a couple of coats, a couple of patching coats. So it is a cheap, on the budget kind of way to fill, and it's not too cracky, compared to like a spackle, a real crumbly spackle. This is better, but it's not as good as the spot putty.
And that's one of the other pluses I've heard of the acrylic putty is that you can build it thicker and it doesn't crack. The Bondo spot putty, if you get it to a certain thickness, it will start to crack because of the type of material that it is. So beyond that, it's just, using that, the Duplicolor regular primer and just going through the motions of, however high you want to go. 320, 400, 600, 800, 1,000. I don't know if I've ever really done anything over 800. For a finished paint piece. I've gone up to 1,000 for things that I'm going to mold because when I pull them out of the mold, I want them to be like ready to go from the mold. You just rub it down a little bit with like another like 800 or 1,000 to kind of rough up the surface again, so the primer will stick to it. And really, that's the end of that process. I mean, it's the thing is it's not like some super secret thing or some big deal. It's a lot of work because every time.
Well, what do you finish with after you're done? So you've sanded, you mentioned, and up to your highest grit sandpaper, and then do you have a final spray of something like pre-mold?
I've heard different schools of thoughts about it, and it just kind of depends on the piece for me. Sometimes I'll just spray it one more time with the same primer. And you get even one more nice layer of smoothness. Sometimes I won't do that, and I'll just go straight to painting it with whatever it's going to be painted with, or maybe like waxing it for a mold. So
waxing it.
Yeah, you can use like automotive wax to kind of to wax your,
like McGuire's stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
What? I don't know how this has eluded me. How have I missed this? You wax it.
It's just like one more step of smoothness that you can get out of it before you go, specifically for molding, before you mold it. So, and
there's no, I guess this is a whole nother thing to look into, but have you run into any curing inhibitions with like the platinum silicone or?
I generally only use 10 cure silicone.
Okay. Well,
so
I'm living in a platinum land right now.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about that, it's something Harrison does quite a bit, I believe, open props. I've only done it like once or twice. And in all honesty, the stuff I was building, it didn't really need to be necessary. It was more, I was just kind of trying it out. And it's not even something you have to do. But if you do want to kind of go one step beyond to make that piece super ready for molding, you can take the time to wax it if you want.
Okay. And I would only deal with that with my dragon skin pieces if it was left in the mold. So like you can clean the mold out with mineral spirits, right? Like most silicones you can. Isn't that right?
I think so.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry guys. Don't listen. Check everything I'm talking about. My brain is potato right now. I have so many things that I've absorbed because as Eric knows, this costume is a whole new rodeo for me. I've kind of stuck to a lot of the same base materials, but they're variations of like a base of something. And now I've jumped into things that are something I'm completely different. Like
where you're kind of experimenting along the way. So
yep. I sure am.
But for me, that's a, and we're talking rattle can here. Now you can get so much better, more amazing stuff if you have an HVLP setup, and you can go to 2K primers, which a lot of our.
But does that require a catalyst?
Yeah, it's a catalyst type primer. So
it has like
you have to mix them. Because it cures instead of dries, right? And that's where automotive finishes come from. The 2K stuff is made for automotive industry. So, but that's a whole nother thing. It's something I haven't delved into yet because you can buy a cheap Harbor Freight gun or whatever, but that's one of those things that if I'm going to be,
you can get a critter gun for pretty cheap too, though.
Yeah, but you can't really do critters are more for like large. I mean, that's like a hose, right? And that's like that's really for something like you're gonna coat your piece in latex or something, that kind of stuff where it's not a paint and it's something that is pretty viscous and just you kind of need a fire hose to apply it with. So but you can buy
those of us that apply our primer like fire hose like a fire hose, then I guess it works for us. You should see how thick my shoulder piece is right now.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, that's what I use, and someday I'll delve into the HVLP, but I'd rather invest some money into a setup and have Harbor Freight stuff's fine, but if I'm painting a piece that somebody's paying me thousands of dollars to work on, if I'm going to out the gate start using a different setup, I'm going to make sure I have good tools to make sure the result I get is what I want. Even though cheaper tools can do the same job, I've just learned that over the years, you usually pay more in the end because you end up buying the better thing anyway. So
it's true. And that's not, for people that are on a budget, there's a lot that you can get from Harbor Freight, like the little tiny airbrush kit. I recommend that to everybody because the whole kit's like $60.
Oh yeah,
you can run that till it dies.
And when I was airbrushing these the other day on my Twitch channel, and you were making fun of me for spending an hour and a half taping, you're like, wow, his compressor must be really tiny because I can't hear it at all. And it was just my little tiny Harbor Freight compressor that I've had, airbrush compressor.
And I started with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I use when I'm here in my workspace here, which is my clean room, where my computer and stuff is, and our costumes and things, and it's the separate part of the shop where everything's dirty in the shop over there,
Yeah.
or over there through that door, and that's where my big compressor is in there. And it's just a pain to run the hose and stuff if I'm just going to do something really quick in here. So,
and it can be dangerous too, depending on how much, your PSI that you're blowing through those tubes in your house. I mean, I've looked up a lot of horror stories because I get really nervous about people that have that run like cheap tubing around their shop for their air tools, and then
and then it explodes. Yeah, because
you're
basically building an air bomb, right? I mean, it's a pipe. It's a pipe capped at two ends with pressure running into it.
Yeah, and so do it correctly. But so before we move off of the auto body primer thing, I want to just mention, obviously, my whole reason in wanting to talk to Eric a little bit more about this in front of you guys is so that you can see. I mean, I consider myself a lot more of a novice with the finishing process. Maybe I can create a great pattern, and patterns are my forte, but the finishing process, I rush a lot. And so I've slowed down and I've taken more steps, but I love the auto body primer, and something that I've started using is the Duplicolor primer surface in like a giant gallon can, and I mix it up like the Hulk because it sits. If you buy a can that's at your auto body store and you try to just open it and use it, you have lost your cotton picking mind because it's all in the bottom like that split peanut butter.
It definitely separates.
Yeah. So and you have to shake it a lot and really be prepared for that full upper body workout to shake that, and or get a mixer, like a concrete mixer on a drill, and mix it like that. And so I have been brushing that on because it's brushable and spraying. It says on the can. And I have the thinner for spraying, but I have been brushing it on, and I'm in love with it.
Wow.
I can't believe this. Like, I thought like brushing it, oh gosh, I'm going to create more work for myself. But if you get it on there really fast and before it starts to skin over, it all kind of like self-levels together.
See, and that's what I love about primer. It's so easy to use. I always kind of wonder, right, why can't paint be that way?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, because primer, it's like it'll stick to anything. It'll be really level, and it won't have any, you brush it, it doesn't have brush strokes. And it's like primer's so great. Yeah. Why isn't paint the same way? I know it's science. Okay.
It's science.
Science is not my thing.
Before we move away from this, I want to mention I've been brushing it on with a silicone brush. Yeah, because that way I can just yank all the primer right out of it, because I started with chip brushes, and unless you want to take the time to use thinner and clean your chip brush, which I ain't like that. The silicone brush will last forever.
Chip brushes are specifically made to not clean. I mean, that's the whole point of a chip brush.
Yeah.
And while we're on that topic of silicone brushes, I have a small one that I use for barge that works really well too.
Oh.
So there you go.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
I have
and the nice thing about
my barge with a ketchup container, a squeezy ketchup container.
Yeah, that works great too.
But
I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can do it. If you don't have a glue pot and you want an easy way to spread it, a small silicone brush works really well. And the best part about it is you just kind of let it dry. Don't let it dry all the way, because then you can't get it off. But if you let it dry like halfway to where it's kind of gummy, you can just grab one part of it and pull it, and then the whole glob of barge will come off of all the fingers of the silicone. It's just kind of fun to do.
Yeah, it is. I love that. It's like one of those satisfying things. But speaking of the barge, I have, as you guys can probably see behind me, those of you that are watching, if not, I will describe it. It is a cast iron glue pot from Chicago Medical Supply. It was, I think, $45.
I see it back there. I've been wanting one of those for a long time.
Well, you can have mine.
Really?
Sell it to you for $5. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So I get the whole like method of clean off the top so it can seal and stuff. Yeah. I use barge thinner. After talking to my friend Eric Jarman, we had a big chat about different ways to thin barge, and he's like, if you're getting an expensive adhesive, use the right thinner. Don't junk it up. So
no.
I bought these ketchup bottles. Super cheap on Amazon, and I mixed thinner and barge in them and shake it up outside with eye protection wear on, because I am going to be that 1% that loses my eye to thinner, So I shook it up, and I now can just cap it outside and squirt a little bit on, and then I run the side of the tip along to smooth it, and then cap it, and the cap doesn't stick to that plastic. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. So and it's very quick. The fumes are like non-existent. The glue pot says it seals, you peel off the top and it sits back in it. But to me, it needs a silicone rubber. It needs like a sealing cap. So I don't know.
It doesn't have like a seal edge on it?
No.
Really?
And I feel
I always assumed they did.
See, and I think that like maybe other ones do, but even still, now that I've used this bottle method, I'll never go back. Yeah. Because I love being able to have the thinner and mix it. Like,
speaking of, we mentioned Will from WM Armory a little bit ago. I learned that from him. He's really big on the squeezy bottle method.
Oh, Will, Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah,
I love Will so much. He's one of my favorite. Definitely, like, I don't know if he's not a prop maker. I just like original artist, because now he's doing
always
original
doing
work.
stuff. He got snagged by Hollywood though, so we don't get to see him build as much stuff now. Personal stuff, because he's always doing Hollywood stuff.
Yeah,
so.
But that's great though.
No, that's awesome for him. I'm happy for him.
He's moving on up. So, anyways, before I turn this into a
how do we go from priming and sanding to gluing?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were gonna say, is that the Jeffersons or something?
No, I knew it was Jeffersons.
It is Jeffersons.
You forget I'm old. I mean, some of the people listening to this might be like, "What was that?"
Sorry, guys. Yeah. Well, I grew up. My old people raised me, so like I grew up watching like I Love Lucy long before
I love Lucy.
Yeah, man. Like I love stuff. Like I love that old fashioned stuff. I just recently rewatched Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor, and like most of my friends have never seen that movie and don't know it's like one of the most expensive movies of all time, and it's crazy to watch. But like people get upset about whitewashing for like Ghost in the Shell. Don't worry,
it's like go watch Cleopatra.
Yeah, it's like please watch Cleopatra, please. Because but it's not Egyptian at all.
That movie is amazing because some of those outdoor sets they did.
It's unbelievable.
Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it would. They couldn't make anything like that nowadays. It would.
Yeah.
It would.
And she was the first actress to get $1 million. Like
it would be like a $500,000 budget, to create something
CGI.
Like that. No. So I mean, they have all those massive buildings, and if there's 1,000 people in a scene, there was 1,000 people in the scene.
Yeah.
And it's just that movie is a spectacle.
Yeah, and it's worth watching. I mean, you're going to have to go into it thinking it's dated. And hey, I love that this podcast, we're allowed to talk about this because it is culture, geek culture, right?
We must be done talking about sanding and finishing.
We can keep talking about sanding and finishing, but like, I just wanted to share my pain with you guys.
Was there anything else we wanted to say about that?
I mean, I have like lots of things that I'd like to talk about like my experiences with PLA and ABS and sanding those, but I feel like that's more of we could have another conversation about.
But kind of the specifics of like, because this whole episode kind of started as like, hey Eric, what's kind of your process? And I think I've explained my process pretty well. It's a very basic thing.
I think it's a good thing to mention. So I contacted you when I was working on my Braveheart. Braveheart is not the thing. Yeah, Braveheart Lion. I was thinking Mel Gibson. And I asked you like when you're all finished sanding, what do you spray with?
Oh, yeah.
And you told me like you start with that like a Rust-Oleum black spray primer for like a metallic finish.
Well, it depends on the paint.
Oh, okay.
So
if you're spraying rattle can.
Well, so
uh-oh.
Let's see.
Have I opened a can of worms?
No, I use like I've kind of gone away from using enamels, so that's your standard rattle can paint. Lately I've been using a lot of acrylics, both Creatix and Wicked Colors.
I have those.
But I've also, because of the work I did with Vert Vixen, Alicia Bellamy with Arthas and Frostmourne.
Hi, Alicia.
Started using, shout out to her, by the way. I started using lacquers quite a bit because the All Clad 2 lacquers. Sorry, I'm looking at a bottle here.
Yes, you're right. I forgot that.
The All Clad 2 lacquers have such amazing metallic finishes.
Yeah, they do.
But like with those require well, maybe I should back up. I'll just say, generally speaking, if you're going to do a shiny finish, and especially if it's chrome, a black base almost always makes the paint look better.
Yeah, yeah.
With the All Clads, you pretty much have to do some kind of black base.
Yes.
As the base finish. So for something like Frostmourne and the last Fire Emblem sword I did, the Sword of Seals, both of those were painted with All Clad lacquers. They were base coated with just standard Krylon black enamel. Okay. Mm-hmm. That just happens to be a brand that the lacquer doesn't have have a bad reaction with.
Yes.
So you can't just grab any paint and use it as a base and then spray lacquer over the top of it.
Like polyurethane, and doesn't get along with it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I don't know for sure, but it wouldn't surprise
Harrison
me.
has a little grid in that book.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I need to look at his book again. I need to
I have it like printed out, and
I tout it I tout it, but then it's like I just try to go off memory instead of like refreshing my memory, you know?
Yeah. Well, if you look at it enough, you will memorize it. So like
Yeah.
I had an orange peel problem. So I was like,
Yeah,
"No,
you don't want
what
you
am I
want to
gonna-"
stay away from the orange peel problem. But I know for
Yeah.
sure that Krylon black gloss plays well with all clad lacquer.
Okay.
So in that case, because it was lacquer, it had to have a black gloss coat.
Yeah.
And so that final step, you know, you asked, well, was there anything you spray it with before? Yeah, that whole thing gets painted black first, which I actually, I think I kind of, because Frostmourne was kind of in parts, but I think I kind of sort of put it together when it was black just to see what a black Frostmourne looks like. And it actually looked really, really cool as all black, you know. And I love that stage too, because it's kind of like, this looks cool as black. Maybe we'll just stop there.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know?
And it looks so glossy and like you can't see the metallic is when you start to see if you missed a problem. Oh,
well, the gloss, when you hit the first time you hit it with gloss, you'll know every imperfection you have on that thing.
Most of them, but
because gloss is so terrible about showing imperfections. I mean, any little divot, anything that you missed with sanding, it's going to be so apparent so quickly. Mm-hmm. So I guess what it comes down to, it's like I don't always do a black coat first. It just kind of depends on the paint.
Right,
But generally speaking, black will make your metallics look better. It's pretty much a necessary thing with All Clad. All Clad also sells their own like gloss black you can use, but it's just cheaper and easier to get to just.
And they have a sealer and like a spray filler too. I'm pretty sure, like a little weird white bottle.
Yeah, I started with their white filler primer. It's a primer made for it, but it was just, but I kind of ran out of it on the Frostmourne project, and I started researching it and found out that hey, you can use these other things too. Yeah. So you can mix and match just like with everything, with prop building, costume making. Anytime you're using paints, test. I can't reiterate that enough because
I wish I did that. I wish I would listen to that advice.
The last thing you want to do is make this amazing thing be down to the last step and hit it with the wrong paint and have it all orange peel on you.
Oh,
and there's like, other than maybe, you know, having your prop broken at a con or something, there's probably no more disheartening thing than to work so hard on something and have it get messed up in that final stage.
Yeah. And let things cure.
Horrible feeling.
Oh man, like the orange peel is definitely a problem. And luckily I've only dealt with that one piece, and it was just because I was using something I had on my shelf and this is long before I knew the information I know now. But I will say something I have dealt with is if you're using a laminating resin or any kind of resin at all, and it has not fully cured, and you you think it's cured, you're like, oh, it's definitely cured in like a day, and I can go ahead and start spraying primer or whatever to finish it. And then you get that Grand Canyon earthquake cracking, like full separation, like Moses has parted the sea kind of thing. You didn't let it cure.
Yeah. No curing is occurring.
I have a chest that I built for a project I did with Liz, and it just lives in her garage now, and it's probably fully cured now, but it wasn't cured for a long time. Yeah, and weather can affect it, climate, old product, all kinds of things can affect something curing. And like one of my favorite sprays, is a side note about finishing sprays, is appliance epoxy, Rust-Oleum. Dude, I live and die for that stuff. I love it. In the summertime, you can spray it. It'll cure super fast. It's great. It's wonderful. Spray that stuff in the winter and you don't read the can. And the can says, do not spray this when it's cold, you idiot.
Yeah. And how long did that take to cure?
My gosh, I'm so sorry, Liz. It took so long to cure. It's crazy. And it's just more
than a couple days, right?
Yeah, more than a couple days. But in the summer, the Mercy breastplate that she sprayed on when I first recommended it to her cured so fast, looked so good, beautiful. But we got in those cold winter months and we were using it and we were like, this is a nightmare. I can't believe this. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I just neglected to read it. And so there are certain things that aren't just about like their interactions. It's about like you may be set back in time because you didn't realize this needs longer because of this time of year. Like shellac, you need to give shellac like a week, really. And woodworkers say that to like let it fully cure and try to mess with it before that. I mean,
if you have warm weather, you can actually go on top of shellac in like 2 hours. I've done it before without any problems. So,
well, yeah, but it's different.
I was saying you can. It's not optimal. It's not optimal.
It depends on if you're going to touch it.
Yeah.
So I will say that like my Frostborn had shellac. That blade is shellacked. My Frostborn. Sorry, if you guys go look it up, it's not Eric's Frostborn. It's my Frostborn. It's very different looking, and it was my first prop ever. My first like completed weapon prop. So I coated the blade with shellac to get it really smooth, and I brushed it because it would go on thicker, and it was great. But even though it says the recoat time is a very short window, I had to give it a long time before I began messing with it, because I did mess with it like I do with everything. I got to touch it. Why do I think that's the way to test something?
Everybody does it. Everybody does it.
Smudged.
I've literally spent like 2 decades trying to keep myself from touching, not touching something I just painted.
I touch everything. It's so bad. I'm so sorry. I have Goo Gone wipes and I have Goo Off for cyanoacrylate. I have to control myself with like grown up baby wipe supplies so that I don't just live with resin on my fingers and silicone on my fingers. Like I've had so much silicone on my fingers from touching it, and then it goops up and pulls.
Yeah. Then you have like this little pointy thing in your.
You could tell if anyone ever visits my shop, you'll be able to look and see the pieces that I've touched because they have the finger pull.
Like a little mountain on there because you pulled it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's my true fire method to see.
So what I've come down to is, again, this is if I have time, and it's usually because I'm working on a commission piece and I have it scheduled out. Whatever I'm working on when I'm painting, whether it's priming or the paint or whatever, I try to have enough time that I lay down whatever it is, the paint or whatever, get as many coats as it needs to be, and then I don't touch it for at least a day. It just sits.
Yeah.
And that's
a good method.
And I put it in a different room so I don't have to look at it, and I can just kind of forget it's in there.
Yeah.
And then I wait a whole day before I touch it again. And since I've been doing that, and if I have time to do that, I haven't had the issues with screwing things up because I touched them or leaving thumbprints or fingerprints or whatever the thing is. It's a discipline though. You have to really just kind of set it aside and just be like, I'm okay with this. I'm going to go work on something else. This can dry for a day. So that's been my discipline.
I find that you don't need discipline if you just have a whole bunch of projects going at the same time. You'll just naturally forget that it's in the other.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the thing. It's like if you have something else that you're juggling at the same time, and that's what I do when I'm building for like my family. If we're getting ready for a con, it's like I'll be building 3 projects at once, and then you go through the steps. It's like, okay, this is painted, it goes in there, now onto the next thing, and you just kind of do this shell game of moving things around. So that's pretty good. You can just like have it out of sight, out of mind for me. So I think that's something we all struggle with. I don't know. It's something about the human mind that wants to go, ooh, shiny. It needs to be touched.
Oh, man. I hate it when it's a sculpt, too. Like, if it's something that's like a dough, and I'm like, is that hard yet? Can I sand that yet? What is wrong with me? And I've dented it like a little kid in cake. Oh. Gosh, man. I'm getting better, but it's a little tricky. It's tricky to give up the touching thing. But, yeah. So what's so we talked about paint and whatnot. What do you seal all clad with? Do you buy their gloss spray? Yeah,
they have a couple different things. I've found I like their aqua gloss the most.
Aqua gloss, okay.
Yeah, it's formulated for. If you read the label, it says it's more for their flat matte finishes. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why, but I think it looks, how with metallic finishes, it generally dulls the any kind of clear coat dulls the finish. Mm-hmm. The aqua gloss doesn't seem to dull it as hardly at all. So that's cool. All right, I'm gonna try that. I hate that dulling thing. That literally drives me and Liz have had a lot of talks about that because she loves that. It's the floral spray you can get from Michael's, and it's like super shine silver. It's literally it looks like it's spraying pigment, like metallic flakes, but you seal it, done. It's done. It looks good. Yeah. So she's been using floor wax, and that is like the one thing that has helped it. And I think, can't remember if I tested the floor wax with lacquer. And it might have just been the type I had, or if I saw a video of somebody else doing it, but it reacts to lacquer. Oh, no. That's a bummer. I think. Oh, man. Okay. Well, but lately, but for matte finishes, I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. This is by Treehouse Studios, so they're just like a crafting supplier. And this clear clear, I can't say clear acrylic.
Clear acrylic. There you go.
Just matte finish. This stuff is amazing. I used this on all of the Star Wars stuff I just built.
Okay.
And actually I used it on the wood part of these handles. Have a matte finish on them, and then this Rust-Oleum has a gloss finish on it. So those are two different finishes.
Did you tape it off?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you did.
But this matte finish, I love this stuff, and I haven't had any problems with it reacting to anything I've sprayed on yet so far. And it's acrylic based, so it shouldn't have problems with that. But it has a really good nozzle, and it dries super quick. So
I'll have to try that because I've tried a lot of different finishes, and because there's a difference between a finish on something that is going to sit on a shelf and be decorative or be on display and something that has to be handled.
Handled, yeah.
Because the human hands will that's a dirty word. Will mess up all kinds of things.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it's amazing what will, even with finishes, it'll. Yeah, I'm hoping that this stuff, because I used it on these Tariel daggers. I haven't used it. Let's see, have I used it on anything that's hands are touching yet? Now that I think about it, I haven't. So hopefully these will hold up. Okay.
Well, something I found that I love if you're getting handsy is the acrylic lacquer automotive spray, like the Duplicolour stuff. It's in the automotive section. Oh, yeah. And a couple of coats of that, it dries really hard, and I have that all over my Alice mallet, which is something that I was handling a lot. Gotcha. And I have it on other things too, and that's worked really well for me for the handling. Also, the best thing I've used so far for a really high gloss, long term kind of finish, I do love spray shellac. I was
going to say another one I use is spray shellac because it's actually a sealer as well.
Yeah, and it's a resin, so it's a little more durable. Yeah. And resin or Casting Crafts resin spray, which is so expensive. It's this tiny little can that's in the craft section at like all craft stores, and it's in the craft section at a craft store. Really, Jackie? That's how you decide to say that? It's in a craft store near you, and it's expensive, so you got to use like your 55% off coupon, and you go through it really fast because it's a small can. Dang, that stuff is durable. Yeah. I mean, all of my Lich King is all coated in it, and that costume doesn't have any problems anywhere. Like, it's been rubbed and packed and worn to death, and it's like, it's that resin coating. You know, something that is a real shell of a spray can make something really durable. So
yeah, definitely. And I haven't used it before, but there's also that, I think it's considered a 2K clear resin spray that you can buy off Amazon. Bill and Britt used it on Commander Holly's helmet they made for her.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. About that. But it's like a special can that you have to puncture, and it's only good for so long because it literally has two parts, and then it mixes together.
Yeah. It's a one-time use, right?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much, and it's a full size. You know, it's not a tiny can, but it's still like $25 a can or something. So it's not. Yeah. You know,
I want to try it, but I'd have to have a lot of projects to use it on because
it's like one of those things you want to kind of gang it up and have a bunch of stuff ready to go, so you're not just like spraying, you know, something this size, which will take like nothing, you know, and then have all this just wasted stuff that you can't use. So
yeah, and I mean, alternatively, so if you really like my Flareon, I wanted to go for this like crazy auto body finish on the breastplate with like flame. You know, I used Createx and wanted it all glossy and shiny, and I coated it in XTC 3D.
Yeah.
As my sealer, and it's so durable. Yeah. But obviously that's a hard area that doesn't flex. Any parts of it that flex, gonna flake off.
When XTC 3D, because it's a brushable resin basically. Yeah. When it's dry, is it shiny like Epsilon is? Yeah.
Yep. It's shiny and clear, and it has a widgeon of flex, not a lot though. Yeah. But it's such a thick layer. Oh, it's on my flail also, and I just being a dick like I am, I scratched it with a metal pick when I was on Prop Live to show, and that was with some effort, and I had so much on it to make it protected that it didn't even get near the paint.
It didn't even notice. Yeah.
So it is great for the handsy kind of like durable prop, but again, for a prop, it's better than a costume. But the front of my chest piece is so rigid that it was fine for that. So I wish that now Smooth On has even more flexible versions of that too, with their new like Smooth Cast 47D and 57D. So I'm curious to see how they cast as well as how it brushes on,
because I know brushes as well.
Yeah, because I know it's not really a brushing I mean, I use a lot of things like they aren't supposed to be used anyway, so I'm just gonna try it because why?
Yeah,
not
I mean,
it?
but the thing is sometimes that works, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, just because it's not necessarily supposed to be used that way doesn't mean you can't use it that way, and doesn't mean it's something that doesn't work for you. So if you come up with any cool stuff, be sure to let us know.
Oh yeah, I love to talk about stuff. So, well,
all right. Does that sound good?
See you later. Bye.
Did we?
No, just kidding.
Are you feeling satisfied about
Yeah, I feel like we talked about a lot of stuff and
finishes, and we even got into clear coats a little more. And just as a side note, I really just dislike clear coats. I mean, they're necessary, but there's just so many different options, and I don't know. I've yet to find like it's just like everything else. There's like everything's different. It's like there's something works well with this, but there's not like a perfect one that does everything. So
that's so true. And a lot of people are even using, or have been trying. I've seen Post Sculpt lately with the Plastidip clear finishes, and now they even have like a pearl. They have glitter spray. So people are even trying that with like some of their foam builds. So I mean, there's so many different ways to do things. Oh yeah, and I had a lot of things. I did want to mention just something that we could go into a whole nother talk about foam and different ways to work with it. But to get a true metallic flexible finish, I have seen one really great success, and now I'm working with this stuff myself, is the vinyl wrapped foam. Yeah. So yes, it'll flex, and it could get a crease, but everything can get a crease, trust me. So I have it on the carbon fiber pieces behind me, if you guys are watching, and I guess I'll show it. But I chose to do my Farah side panels like this because I wanted that carbon fiber. Yeah, and it has a little bit of flex.
And what is that
crease. This is
it's not a fabric then. It's an adhesive type carbon fiber.
Yeah, it's the tech wrap. It's the heat activated
one.
Yeah, and I have the white too, so I'm gonna try a couple pieces because she has that really white sci-fi kind of thing, and it's hard to get that plastic looking foam paint. Yeah. If you have foam and you're trying to make it look like rigid plastic, it can be tricky.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, that's like everybody wants that perfect thing, right? You want a piece that looks, I mean, because really it's foam.
Yeah, and if I put that carbon fiber up against that chest piece on the other pieces, and they all fail to look plastic and they look like foam, you're gonna get me on it, and I don't want that. I want to make sure that it looks as plasticky as possible. So Ted's costume he wore to BlizzCon this year actually looked like plastic. Oh, yeah. And it was foam, which blows my mind.
Yeah, it looked great.
But Ted's a wizard. I already know. He sacrifices goats and stuff to the foam gods.
He has amazing painting skills. I mean, he has everything. He does everything really well. His build skills are right up there too, if not some of the best of people that I know. But his painting is just like another notch above most everybody, and specifically his weathering techniques and his stuff just looks so good. You have to see it in. I mean, photos always, photos are photos, but when you really see a piece in person, you're just like, holy smokes.
Yeah. I walked past him at BlizzCon before I realized it was him because he had a helmet, and I was like walking into the con, he was outside posing, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, it looked so good. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. And then I saw him with his helmet off, and I was like, what? It's Ted. I didn't even realize that was like the final costume he was working on. I saw bits and pieces along the way. But it's really cool. That was
pretty impressive. I can't wait to have him on the show. So.
Oh, I know. I love Ted. I can't wait to either. I'm excited to take all this advice you've given me though and work on this stupid helmet.
Well, I hope it works. And like I said, I'm going to go sand. It's stuff I've learned and stuff that I do, and it works for me. Like I said, there's a whole lot of other processes and things that people do. So, okay. So you guys, thanks for sticking with us. If you've been with us this long, before this episodes get any longer, we're going to say goodbye. And thanks again for spending the time with us and for listening to Craft and Geek. See you next time.
You're the best. Bye.